To me, there are a few different aspects and things that you need to know to be a guitar hero. One of the biggest ones is playing with attitude and aggression and passion. I think that's a big part of rock guitar playing. And it's a little bit abstract and it's a little bit hard to teach, but there are definitely some concrete elements that can go into that. So let's get into that. It all has to do with feel and power, and it takes like I said, a bit of aggressive attack on the instrument. First of all, you got to make sure that you have a really heavy, overdriven sound, or else the stuff is just going to sound really wimpy. All right, so that's the first thing. But one of the basic elements that you want to incorporate is vibrato, and not just normal vibrato, but what I call like an over-exaggerated vibrato. And if you do that in conjunction with a couple of other things like artificial harmonics and bending and overbending, you're going to have this kind of in-your-face aggressive style. And so that's a big part to playing like a guitar hero. So if you were just playing, all right, so let me explain some of that stuff. For example, I'm in G. I'm just in the pentatonic over here in the third position. So notice when I'm bending the B flat, and the vibrato that I'm doing is very exaggerated, meaning it's wide. It's not like a wimpy kind of, or even like a. It has attitude to it, where you're going to overbend. You want to have this kind of back and forth motion, and you want to use the support of your other fingers. A good way to practice that is basically use your other fingers behind the note as support, and practice vibratoing like at least a whole step when you bend. All right, now in that case, I'm pulling down on this. Or you can pull up, push up. Another element of that is if you couple that with artificial harmonics, then it even sounds more in your face and more powerful and aggressive. So once again, you have to have an overdriven, heavy sound. Works best definitely on the bridge position pickup. First, you got to practice without the bending. I think is probably a good idea, and just try to work on getting. And then if you couple that with the bending and vibrato, then that's where the aggression comes in. So what's happening here is that choking up on the pick really tight so that my thumb is hanging over the edge of the pick. And basically what you're doing is picking the note first and then immediately having the flesh of your thumb hit the string. So it's following up the pick note with a harmonic note, and it's called an artificial harmonic. And if you fret a note with your left hand, you can experiment on getting the different tones, because there's going to be a natural progression of tones. Another thing along the same lines is when you're bending notes to do some overbending. Meaning, traditionally, if you're bending a note, you're bending, if you're staying in the key, either a whole step, like I just did, or a half step. Something that you can do, which is a little bit more aggressive and in your face, is taking a note and bending it further than a whole step, maybe a step and a half, maybe 2 steps. In this case, in G, that's one of my favorites right there. So you take in the D, and you're bending it all the way up to an F. So you have a step and a half bend. And once again, if you couple that with artificial harmonics and vibrato, you get something pretty cool. I always like to show people that the difference between playing in kind of a wimpy, non-expressive, style, which really has no personality, and then the difference between that and then playing with the style and how important it actually is. Because a lot of these elements, a lot of people don't really practice it necessarily. It's something that you develop with your style. Now, any of those licks I was just playing, if I just played them, just played the notes, like if you were reading this on paper and you went, I mean, it sounds kind of boring, you don't have the gain. You're not digging in with the right hand, right? And you're certainly not using the power of the left hand to do that vibrato. So, makes a big, big difference. And that power, I guess it's something that you have to, develop. You need to develop strength in your fingers and calluses and all that good stuff. And like I said, notice I'm doing things for support. I'm putting my thumb over the top, adding my fingers behind the other notes. I'm doing all non-traditional things, more rock-style things to do that. For me, like before a tour, if I'm getting ready, I'll go through and I'll work on exercises to get my chops up, and I'll also review the music to make sure I remember what I'm playing. But inevitably, after the first show, second show, my hands, my fingertips are killing me, because you just, when you play live, you just play with a lot more power and aggression and force and energy, and you're standing and you're in people's faces and you're trying to communicate something. It's a lot different than playing at home, just sitting there going through the motions. But I think this aggression and this attitude, you can make it come across in a recording, can make it come across live. It's something that's important to be aware of. And like I said, it's not really talked about a lot or taught. You emulate it by hearing other players do it, probably the most. Something along the same lines is playing 2 notes at the same time, which when you have distortion on, lends to like a really aggressive, growly type of sound. There are a couple of ways of doing this. Some are more traditional, where you're playing what'd you call that? An oblique bend? There you go. Where you're fretting one note and bending another. So you're only bending one of the 2 notes. I mean, that's definitely more rock and roll sounding, more traditional. Also playing 2 notes at the same time that aren't bent right. You actually can bend those, which is cool. Another thing that you can do that I like to do that adds a lot of aggression now, also if you add into this a wah-wah pedal and some delay, then you're on top of the mountain. Guitar hero playing guitar. But I like to take notes, bend them, and as I'm bending the note up, have the edge of my finger catch the adjacent string, and you get this kind of nasty, little bit out of tune sound. And once again, it takes something that's probably more simple and add some attitude. All right, so what I'm doing is I'm bending a note on one string, and at the top of the bend, I'm grabbing the adjacent string with the tip of my finger, so it sounds at the same time, like. And it kind of just adds this distant overtone, but it has a lot of attitude. If you combine that with the overbending, then you really style it. In this case, in G, you know, you kind of get a major sound if you just bend it a slightly bit higher. So another element to playing like a rock star is using open string licks. And I'll show you a couple of examples. One of them is from a song called Paradigm Shift from Liquid Tension Experiment. And it's in G, which goes along with the other licks that we were doing. And the cool thing about it is that you can get more motion and you're not really playing too much as far as picking because there's a lot of pull-offs and things going on. But the open strings maintain the tonality and they kind of keep it rooted. So it's in G, and the open strings I'm going to be using are G and D. So they're automatically, you know, the tones in the chord. And the notes that I'm kind of bouncing around on are in the pentatonic with a flat 5. And this kind of came out of like trying to play an open string lick, a typical open string lick, like, and then trying to do something that was rhythmically syncopated. So I think the origin of it was I was probably doing something where I was kind of, you know, and if you something like that eventually turned into so the actual riff is this. Octave higher. All right, so it has a cool sound because you're jumping, you know, an octave there. There's another heroic, to use your phrase, and rock star-ish thing is just using the harmonic minor scale. You got to know that. And you know, this kind of combines three different elements. One is using the harmonic minor scale. Two is a little bit of open stringness that we talked about, and then also traveling in a legato fashion down one string in this case. So that's the lick. All right, so here's the scale. All right, and then slow. So the way that I'm applying this and hearing it is over B. So it's an E harmonic minor scale with a B as the root, and which makes it technically fifth mode of the scale. It's called Phrygian dominant once again.